The economics of conflict, understanding the U.S. approach to war. To truly comprehend the United States and its global maneuvers, one must grasp the overarching economic motivations behind its actions. The U.S. has often engaged in or instigated wars not primarily to achieve traditional military victories, but to generate substantial economic gains. Examining historical conflicts such as the Vietnam War and the war in Afghanistan, it becomes evident that the U.S.'s strategic approach to war is intricately linked to its economic interests. Today, this approach faces new challenges as Russia and China emerge as competitors in the war business. The Vietnam and Afghanistan Wars. Economic imperatives. The Vietnam War and the war in Afghanistan serve as prime examples of the U.S.'s economic motivations in war. In Vietnam, the U.S.'s prolonged military engagement resulted in substantial profits for defense contractors and related industries. The war, often viewed as unwinnable in conventional terms, provided a continuous demand for military supplies, equipment, and services, ensuring steady income streams for American businesses involved in the defense sector. Similarly, the war in Afghanistan, spanning 2 decades, created a lucrative market for defense contractors, private security firms, and reconstruction companies. The economic benefits extended beyond the battlefield, influencing global markets for oil, minerals, and other natural resources. By maintaining a military presence and fostering a state of perpetual conflict, the U.S. was able to secure economic advantages, often overshadowing the ostensible political and ideological goals of these wars. Proxy wars. The U.S. strategy of indirect engagement. The U.S. has also excelled in conducting proxy wars, where it supports and supplies arms to allied factions in conflicts without direct involvement. This strategy allows the U.S. to exert influence and achieve economic objectives while minimizing the risk to American lives and resources. Proxy wars have the dual benefit of destabilizing regions, creating opportunities for economic exploitation, and generating profits through arms sales. In many instances, the U.S. has facilitated conflicts by providing military aid and equipment to factions aligned with its interests. These wars create a continuous demand for arms and military supplies, which American companies are well-positioned to fulfill. Additionally, the chaos and instability resulting from these conflicts often lead to weakened local governments, making it easier for U.S. corporations to secure favorable terms for accessing natural resources and energy supplies. The energy and natural resource nexus. A critical aspect of the U.S.'s involvement in wars is the pursuit of energy and natural resources. Wars create opportunities for American companies to gain access to valuable resources such as oil, natural gas, minerals, and rare earth elements. By destabilizing regions rich in these resources, the U.S. can position itself as a dominant player in the global energy market. For instance, the Middle East's vast oil reserves have been a focal point of U.S. foreign policy for decades. Conflicts in Iraq, Libya, and other oil-rich nations have allowed the U.S. to secure favorable oil deals and maintain its influence over global energy markets. The extraction and control of these resources are often facilitated by military interventions and the subsequent establishment of compliant regimes. Emerging competition. Russia and China. The U.S.'s dominance in the war business is increasingly challenged by Russia and China. Both nations have adopted strategies similar to those of the U.S., engaging in proxy wars, arms sales, and the pursuit of natural resources. Russia's involvement in Syria and Ukraine, and China's Belt and Road Initiative, which often includes military and economic components, reflect their growing influence in global conflicts and economic exploitation. Russia and China offer alternative sources of military support and economic partnerships to nations traditionally within the U.S. sphere of influence. This competition complicates the U.S.'s ability to unilaterally dictate terms and outcomes in global conflicts. Moreover, it introduces new dynamics into the global arms market, with these nations providing advanced military technology and equipment to their allies. The African revolutions, a wake-up call. In recent years, Africa has experienced a series of political upheavals and revolutions, marking a significant shift in the continent's geopolitical landscape. These revolutions represent a wake-up call, as former colonies begin to reject their traditional Western colonizers in favor of new alliances with China and Russia. Countries like Sudan, Mali, and the Central African Republic have seen significant changes in their political regimes, often accompanied by a shift in foreign alliances. China's extensive investment in African infrastructure through its Belt and Road Initiative has provided an attractive alternative to Western aid, often perceived as neo-colonial. Similarly, Russia has been expanding its influence through military cooperation agreements and the provision of security services by private military companies like the Wagner Group. These developments indicate a broader trend of African nations seeking to diversify their international partnerships, leveraging the competition between global powers to their advantage. This shift poses a challenge to the U.S., which must now contend with the growing influence of China and Russia on a continent rich in natural resources and strategic importance. Conclusion: the economics of war in a multipolar world. Understanding the U.S.'s approach to war requires recognizing the economic imperatives driving its actions. Wars, whether direct or proxy, serve as instruments for generating economic gains, securing access to resources, and maintaining global influence. The Vietnam War and the war in Afghanistan exemplify the economic motivations behind U.S. military engagements. As Russia and China emerge as significant players in the war business, the global landscape becomes more complex and competitive. The U.S. must navigate this multipolar world, adapting its strategies to maintain its economic and geopolitical interests. The recent revolutions in Africa underscore the shifting alliances and the challenges posed by new power dynamics. Ultimately, the economics of war will continue to shape international relations, with nations vying for influence and resources in an ever-evolving global order.